Energy transformation in Poland is one of the biggest challenges for Polish economy. Security of electricity supply and the reasonable level of energy prices are key factors in maintaining stable economic growth. Energy market in Poland has been experiencing intensive changes for almost 3 decades. Currently, in compared to energy systems across West Europe, Polish energy system is still based on coal technologies. Despite the rapid growth of renewable energy sources, there is a significant investment gap which could occur a threat for security of supply electric energy. In this presentation, I would like to indicate the challenges and conditions for energy transition in Poland, particularly in terms of energy security. At the beginning, I would like to present the specific coal-based energy mix in Poland. Secondly, the problem of obsolete assets in Polish energy system will be pointed out. Then I would like to stress the situation on the CO2 emission allowances market, EU ETS, and its impact on energy prices in Poland. The electric energy sector in Poland is based on the production of electric energy from hard coal and lignite. 63% of installed capacity is in units using coal. Other primary energy carriers have a much smaller share in the energy mix. Natural gas has 5% in the capacity installed in the national power system, and hydropower also 5%. The current generation structure results mainly from historical conditions and changes over the past 3 decades. Energy transformation, which currently takes place in Poland, is changing energy mix into more diversified, towards green energy and gas-fired power plants. The investment gap is perceived in connection with limited investments in generation assets in the electricity market over the last 4 decades. The ongoing privatization of the energy sector or political changes in the conditions of doing business, changes in the market structure and in social processes have resulted in the postponement of investment decisions or their complete abandonment. Consequently, the state of generation units, characterized by the number of obsolete coal units, characterized by low efficiency and non-compliance with the latest environmental guidelines, and too few new power units, characterized by much higher efficiency and compliance with so-called BAT conclusions, is worrying. The existence of an investment gap is illustrated on the graph using the age structure of coal-fired power units. The existence of a clear investment gap has implications for the need for significant investment processes to fill it, which is one of the fundamental objectives of the energy transition. The scale of the existing investment gap is so significant that it may lead to a shortage of generation assets in the system in the coming years. Also taking into account the need to retire outdated power units that will not meet increasingly stringent environmental standards, the existing investment gap, in the absence of concrete action, may lead to future threats to the security of electricity supply, which have already occurred in the past. The existing investment gap in the electricity generation asset sector, combined with the uncompetitiveness of the coal-fired units on which generation capacity is based, will result in a significant increase in the need for capital-intensive investment in generation facilities to fill the gap. The dependence of the Polish energy sector on coal means that the shape of the energy market in Poland is strongly dependent on the situation in the EU ETS market. In turn, growing prices of CO2 emission allowances have already started to translate into increasingly higher electricity prices in Poland. Increasing prices of CO2 emission allowances play an important role in the process of electricity price increase in Poland. The current prices of CO2 emission allowances are at historical highs. The psychological barrier of 60 euro per ton of CO2 has already been crossed. The scale of price increases of this instrument may be evidenced by the assumption included in the Polish energy policy until 2040, where it was projected that in 2040 price of CO2 emission allowances will amount to 40 euro per ton of CO2. Such a dynamic increase in the price of emission allowances makes it necessary to update energy policy and to speed up decarbonization in Poland. The effects of the increase in the price of CO2 emission allowances will have an increasing impact on the electricity sector in Poland and on the economy as a whole. The Polish energy sector, which is still based on coal, is particularly exposed to the risk of price increases for this instrument. One of the effects of the adopted climate policy aiming at complete decarbonization is the difficulty in obtaining financing for investments in emission-generating assets. An increasing number of commercial banks have stopped financing investments in coal-fired generation assets, as well as financing companies whose generation profile is predominantly coal-based. In addition, the European Investment Bank also withdrawn from financing gas investments. In fourth quarter of 2020, electricity prices for households in Poland were below the EU average. Also, electricity prices for industry in Poland in fourth quarter of 2020 were below the EU average. When analyzing the above graphs, one should bear in mind the differences in the purchasing power of money among the EU member states. Currently, high wholesale prices are not yet reflected in electricity prices for households and industry, but this trend will change in the near future, very close future, let's say. The highest increase in electricity prices for households across the EU on a year-to-year basis was recorded in Poland, 11%. However, in 2020, the average electricity selling price on the competitive market in Poland was the highest since 2008. As a result, further increases can be expected due to the situation on the CO2 emission allowance market, as well as the need for significant investments in power generation assets as part of the decarbonization of the Polish energy sector. Decisions to increase energy prices have already been taken by energy companies and are awaiting approval by the Energy Regulatory Office. Global supply shocks have also contributed to an increase in the annual dynamics of energy prices. The largest contribution to energy price inflation continued was still the high dynamics of fuel prices for private means of transport, associated with an earlier increase in world crude oil prices and a strong low base effect from last year, and the dynamics of electricity charges, resulting mainly from the introduction of the power capacity charge from the beginning of 2021. That's the liquid fuels part. With the lifting of COVID measures and improving economic activity from third quarter of 2020 onwards, energy commodity prices, as well as prices for CO2 emission allowances (EU ETS) and electricity, began to rise relatively quickly. As a result, by December 2020, they were already, with the exception of oil prices, above their average 2019 levels. For example, before the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, and they continued to rise in the following months of 2021. On the one hand, This was due to development of the vaccination campaign, allowing some of the restrictions to be lifted, favoring the recovery of global economic activity in 2021. On the other hand, new factors specific to individual markets also began to contribute to the price increases. The Polish power sector, which is based on coal, was very clearly affected by the EU ETS price increase in the form of a rise in electricity prices on the day-ahead market, as can be seen in the graphs. Implementation of investments in the power sector is a key element of the energy transition aimed at decarbonization of the electricity generation sector in Poland. The energy transition currently taking place in Poland is forcing a change in the energy mix, from coal-based to a diversified energy mix using renewable and gas-based power plants. Rapidly rising CO2 emission allowance prices will increase the pace of decarbonization due to deepening unprofitability of coal-based power generation. The existence of an investment gap adversely affects Poland's energy security and is a key prerequisite for the implementation of new large-scale energy investments. The ongoing decarbonization will improve profitability of Polish energy companies. Currently, energy prices in Poland are increasingly influenced by the EU ETS, which, due to the significant dependence on coal-fired power generation, has a negative impact on the competitiveness of the Polish energy sector and is also a driver of inflation. The energy sector in Poland differs from those in Western or Southern Europe and will face a number of significant challenges in the coming years to achieve the goal of sustainable energy transition. Thank you for your attention. Bartosz SOBIK and Professor Dorota NIEDZIÓłka.